With your permission, Mr. Speaker, I would like to make a statement. This Saturday would mark 2 years without a fully functioning devolved government in Northern Ireland. That's 2 years without locally elected ministers able to take important decisions on Northern Ireland schools, hospitals and the broader economy. And above all, Mr. Speaker, it's 2 years that Northern Ireland has been held back from achieving the massive potential of this unique part of the United Kingdom. It was nearly 2 years ago that the then First Minister resigned over the old Northern Ireland Protocol. The government recognised that the protocol did not deliver to the people of Northern Ireland the same freedoms that leaving the EU delivered to the rest of the United Kingdom. As the party of the Union, this Conservative government sought to address those concerns by replacing the protocol with the Windsor Framework. I maintain that the Windsor Framework was and is a good deal for Northern Ireland and addresses the issues around the old protocol and sets out a new way forward. But it alone did not provide sufficient to allow the devolved institutions to function with the cross-community support that is such an essential bedrock of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. So for the last few months, my team and I have been holding discussions with the Northern Ireland political parties on how we could see the return of the devolved institutions. These discussions have been long and necessarily tough. But this is a testament to the patience of all Northern Ireland's political leaders who, as I have seen at first hand, work tirelessly to make sure that Northern Ireland is the most prosperous and safe society that it can be. This is particularly true of the Honourable Member for Belfast East. It was a pleasure to confirm recently that the government will support his bill, which seeks to create a dedicated route for eligible Irish nationals who wish to apply for British citizenship. If passed, the legislation would support the close historical and geographical ties between Ireland and the UK, and I commend him for championing this cause. I am pleased now to be able to outline the package we are announcing today, which has 4 core elements. First, it further protects Northern Ireland's place in the UK by demonstrating our commitment to restoring power sharing so that it has the broadest support from across the community in Northern Ireland. I know that I am not alone in believing firmly that the long-term interests of the Union are served by persuading those who might not vote for Unionist parties or even think of themselves as Unionist that Northern Ireland within the United Kingdom offers the best future for them and their children. I have always believed that making Northern Ireland work, indeed making Northern Ireland thrive, is the surest way to safeguard the Union, and I commend the DUP for taking bold steps to make that case for the Union too. We will also legislate to reaffirm Northern Ireland's constitutional status, including as reflected in the Acts of Union. So too will we recognise in domestic law that, through the vital democratic safeguard of the Stormont break that a new Assembly would wield, the idea of automatic and permanent dynamic alignment of EU law no longer applies. We will also future-proof Northern Ireland's position within the UK's internal market against any future protocol that would create new EU law alignment for Northern Ireland, and with it barriers between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK. Second, this deal promotes and strengthens the UK internal market, delivering new legislation to guarantee and future-proof unfettered access for Northern Ireland goods to the whole of the UK internal market, and ensuring that internal trade within the United Kingdom takes place under a new UK internal market system. Only yesterday we saw how quickly progress has been made with a joint legal solution reached with the EU on tariff rate quotas. This solution, to be taken forward at the next UK-EU Joint Committee, would ensure Northern Ireland traders can benefit from the UK's independent free trade policy when importing agri-food goods, reflecting Northern Ireland's integral place in the UK's customs territory. And to maintain that focus on delivering in the interests of businesses for the future, we will also put in place new structures such as a new independent monitoring panel to ensure a practical and pragmatic approach without gold plating. Third, this deal will recognise the importance of the connections across the United Kingdom now and in the future. A new UK East-West Council will bring businesses and ministers together to identify the opportunities that unite us across all parts of the UK. And a new public body, Intertrade UK, will promote and facilitate trade within the United Kingdom, recognising that while international trade is important, so too is the vital trade that occurs within our internal market. Finally, this deal will help put public services on a sustainable footing, with funding totalling over £3 billion to support Northern Ireland's public services and providing a solid foundation for the Executive to deliver better outcomes in the day-to-day lives of the people of Northern Ireland. This is part of a financial package I announced before Christmas that will help to address public sector pay pressures, provide an updated Barnett formula for Northern Ireland now and into the future, reflecting the needs and unique circumstances of the people of Northern Ireland, and give the Executive significant funding to stabilise public finances. Much of what I am announcing today was the result of a significant period of negotiations between the Government and the Democratic Unionist Party led by the Right Honourable Member for Lagan Valley. Many of us in this chamber last week could not fail to have been struck by his unshakable advocacy on behalf of the Unionist cause. This same determination, fortitude and tact was at the heart of his approach in those detailed discussions. And further to his comments in this place last week, I am sure the whole House will join me in expressing support for the Right Honourable Member for Lagan Valley in utterly condemning those shameless figures who have tried to threaten and intimidate him for simply doing his job. The Right Honourable Member is a man who is truly committed to Northern Ireland and to the Union, and someone who has always worked hard to find solutions and improvements where others have taken the far easier path of simply criticising and heckling from the sidelines. The result, as I hope honourable members will agree, is a deal that, taken as a whole, is the right one for Northern Ireland and for the Union. With this package, it is now time for elected representatives in Northern Ireland to come together to end 2 years of impasse and to start work again in the interests of the people who elected them. The Right Honourable Member for Lagan Valley was clear this week that this depended on this government demonstrating its commitment to the Union in not just word but deed. And that is just what we will do. Today I am publishing the details of this deal, but I am also laying the statutory instruments that enshrine several of its commitments in law. Those instruments will be debated in this House tomorrow, an immediate show of good faith. And once, as I hope they will be, they are passed by this House, I trust that we will have the conditions to move onwards to see ministers back in post in Stormont swiftly. As they take their places, they face massive challenges, but so too do they have the tools to grasp them, not least in moving to resolve the public sector pay issues that have been so disruptive. And as well as that, they will be able to grasp the opportunities offered by its unique economic position and the goodwill Northern Ireland enjoys around the world. And, Mr Speaker, it is only right that I acknowledge for many in the community an important part of this will be seeing Michelle O'Neill take her place as First Minister, following the democratic mandate she won at the May 2022 Assembly election, recognising that the First and Deputy First Ministers remain equal in law. I look forward to working with the new First Minister, Deputy First Minister and all their colleagues in the Northern Ireland Executive to improve the lives of people from all backgrounds, whether unionist, nationalist or other. As we move swiftly to give effect to our commitments, I now urge parties to do the same in notifying the Speaker of the Northern Ireland Assembly to recall Stormont, electing a First and Deputy First Minister and appointing new ministers to the Executive. Mr Speaker, it is time to build on the progress of the last 25 years. Today we have presented a plan which will deliver the long-term change that Northern Ireland needs. It will strengthen Northern Ireland's place in the Union and guarantee the free flow of goods across the entire United Kingdom. And it is only by sticking to this plan that we will become a more united and prosperous country, and I commend this statement to the House.
My Lords, it was only last week that we debated the legislation deferring this decision, and we pondered whether in fact we would arrive at a settlement. The Minister was very coy, but it was indeed the result of a great deal of negotiation that we've now arrived at what I consider to be a considerable and significant deal. Can I congratulate the Secretary of State personally on the work that he has obviously done over the last number of months to achieve this, but also to congratulate the Minister himself, who I know would have put a huge amount of effort and who has great knowledge of Northern Ireland to help ensure that this deal actually came to fruition. And of course, I want to put on record my party's appreciation of Sir Geoffrey Donaldson and the immense work that he has done over the last number of months, against all odds and with grave threats, and he's done a great service for the United Kingdom and for Northern Ireland. I'd also like to thank the civil servants in Northern Ireland who actually ensured that there's been government in Northern Ireland in the absence of an assembly for nearly 2 years now, and I think they shouldn't be forgotten. The Minister referred to the document, it's a long one, it's 80 pages, of decisions that have been taken to ensure the deal is effective. And I think there's some very ingenious solutions there. I think that the guarantee that the internal market between Great Britain and Northern Ireland is to be ensured and guaranteed, but also, of course, the fact that we now in Northern Ireland have an internal market, including, by the way, the East-West Council and the inter-trade body which you referred to, as well as the operation of the single market. So I hope that those two factors will ensure that Northern Ireland will have access to markets far beyond that businesses in Scotland, Wales or England would have. But above all else, of course, it leads to the restoration of the institutions of the Good Friday Agreement, the executive and the Assembly, but also, of course, of the Strand 2 institutions, the North-South bodies. And I'd ask the Minister to elaborate a little bit on what he thinks might happen with those bodies. I welcome the financial settlement. At last we've got a needs-based formula for Northern Ireland, in the same that we've got one in Wales, and that's been fought for, certainly by the parties in Northern Ireland, particularly the DUP in this chamber, for some time now. Even though with 3.5 or whatever it is billion pounds, it's a lot of money that's going now into Northern Ireland, the executive and the Assembly will have a really hard job on their hands to ensure that public services are maintained, particularly, of course, the National Health Service, which is in dire straits. I would also ask the Minister whether he could tell us this afternoon, so far as he can, what he thinks the next steps will be over the next few days to ensure the restoration of the institutions. And finally, I think he would agree that we don't really want to see all this happening again. It's been 2 years since we've had an Assembly. Before that, Sinn Féin brought down the Assembly. Is there a case, would the Minister agree, that the parties in Northern Ireland, helped of course by the government, would be able to try to devise a system which would ensure that greater stability would occur in Northern Ireland in years to come? But at the moment, I wish the new nationalist First Minister of Northern Ireland well, the Deputy First Minister well, all the members of the Assembly. It's a good week for Northern Ireland and it's a good week for the country.
Yeah.
My Lords, I too would like to thank the Noble Lord the Minister for repeating yesterday's statement, and also would like to commend him and the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland for their dedication and hard work in all of their efforts to secure the deal that we're discussing today. My Lords, Northern Ireland is in a significantly more hopeful place as a result of this deal, and this is greatly to be welcomed. After 2 years of political vacuum in Northern Ireland, the most important thing is that the Executive and the Assembly can get back to work as soon as possible, for there is so much to do. It's tragic that so much time has been wasted when so much has been needed to be done. Nearly 2 years during which time the healthcare system, education and public services in Northern Ireland have reached crisis point. But as Naomi Long, the leader of Alliance, said on Tuesday, the priority now is where we go from here and not where we have been. I am glad that the deal has been very much welcomed in Northern Ireland, at least in the majority. Indeed, there is a palpable sense of relief. There is recognition across the board that it is surely better for local people to be taking these decisions and, if necessary, pushing for further improvements and further reforms. Once the Assembly and the Executive are fully functioning again, Northern Ireland will have a stronger voice in both Westminster and Brussels. It is also welcome that the funds, the £3.3 billion, can now be released, as the Noble Lord Murphy has said. It's the Executive who will be best placed to decide how this money should be used. The stalemate of the last 2 years has served nobody well. Indeed, the stop-start nature of devolution in Northern Ireland since the Good Friday Belfast Agreement has meant that Northern Ireland has been held back from reaching its full potential. It is unacceptable that for 5 of the last 7 years there has been no functioning executive. But, my lords, people and businesses in Northern Ireland need to know that this deal will last. And as was said many times during the statement in the House of Commons yesterday, there needs to be a bedrock of stability so that it is no longer possible for one party to collapse the executive. Like the Noble Lord Murphy, I'd be grateful if the Noble Lord the Minister can confirm that he will examine ways with the parties in Northern Ireland to ensure that the stability of the institutions can be better protected in the future. My Lords, as has been said, particularly in the House of Commons, this is now an opportunity for Northern Ireland, an opportunity to ensure that Northern Ireland is a place where people want to invest and where families want to choose to come and live. There is so much potential, and I sincerely hope that this time this agreement will last.
My Lords, I am extremely grateful to the Noble Lord Murphy of Torfaen and the Noble Baroness Lady City for their support for the deal reached by my right honourable friend announced yesterday. And responding to the Noble Lord, Lord Murphy of Torfaen, I mean, he talked about the considerable achievement he knows from his own experience as the negotiator of Strand 1 back in 1998, just how difficult and challenging these issues are and can be. So I'm very grateful for what he said, and I will of course pass on his congratulations to my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State, which I know he will greatly appreciate. The Noble Lord also mentioned the contribution of civil servants. I completely agree that they've done a fantastic job in Northern Ireland keeping public services running and really holding society together in many respects in Northern Ireland. In addition, I would like to put on record my thanks to officials both in the Northern Ireland office and the Cabinet office for the outstanding work that they've done in pulling together the deal that was announced yesterday. I would also like to place on record and agree with the right honourable, with the Noble Lord about the contribution of Sir Geoffrey Donaldson. I've known Geoffrey since 1988, believe it or not, and so we do go back some way. He has always been, as Secretary of State mentioned in his statement, a true unionist, committed to making Northern Ireland a safer, more prosperous and better place, and I really do commend the contribution that he's made to this outcome. The Noble Lord referred to the guarantees around the internal market. They are, of course, very important. Northern Ireland's biggest trading partner by far is Great Britain. It is by far the most important market for Northern Ireland. So we are confident that as a result of what's been agreed now, that there will be the smooth flow of goods circulating throughout the United Kingdom. And the Noble Lord was right to highlight the benefits that will bring Northern Ireland alongside the privileged access that it will retain for goods moving into the EU single market. And I think that should be a huge selling point for the newly restored executive working with the UK government in order to try and attract foreign direct investment into Northern Ireland. It really does give Northern Ireland some unique advantages that aren't available anywhere else. The Noble Lord referred to the Strand 2 bodies. As Noble Lords throughout the House are aware, the Belfast Agreement is a three-stranded agreement, all of which strands are interlocking and interdependent upon each other. And without Strand 1 in operation, the Assembly and Executive, the Strand 2 bodies have not been able to function properly and realise the hopes and objectives for them that were contained in the 1998 agreement. With the restoration of the Assembly and the Executive, those Strand 2 bodies will start to function fully again, along with the Strand 3 bodies. For the past couple of years, there have been notable absentees from the meetings of the British Irish Council, for example, 2 empty chairs for the First and Deputy First Ministers of Northern Ireland. I look forward to the next meeting of the BIC and seeing the First Minister and the Deputy First Minister take their rightful places in those bodies. The Noble Lord also welcomed the reference to the financial, made reference to the financial package, and I think strongly welcomed the sums available. It is a significant package alongside a new Barnett formula, and of course going forward the formula will be a subject of negotiation between the Treasury and the Northern Ireland Executive, but I think what's been achieved, what's been agreed around that is a very positive one for Northern Ireland and will significantly help an incoming executive in meeting some of the very real challenges that the Noble Lord raised, and which I fully acknowledge in the coming months and years. The Noble Lord asked about the next steps. The next step is, of course, for the parties to approach the Speaker to recall the Northern Ireland Assembly. The first item of business will then be to elect a new Speaker. Thereafter, it will be to appoint a new First and Deputy First Minister, and then the next step is to run the D'Hondt system, which the Noble Lord knows only too well, in order to allocate the ministers from each of the parties who are eligible to take up places in the executive. Hopefully that will all happen very swiftly. I can't give the precise timetable, but one of the reasons why the other place is debating the statutory instruments today, only a day after publication, is as a clear signal of our intent that this moves as quickly as possible and we get the institutions back up and running in the shortest possible time frame. The Noble Lord and the Noble Baroness talked about trying to introduce reforms and measures to promote greater resilience in the institutions and to prevent a similar scenario of one party pulling down the institutions happening again. We all recall that between 2017 and 2020 it was Sinn Féin who did that, and of course we're familiar with the history of the past 2 years. It is something personally that I think we will need to look at some point, and the government's always made it very clear that the Belfast Good Friday Agreement has never been set in tablets of stone, that there is the capacity for it to evolve as it did at St Andrews in 2006. Changes were made after the Stormont House Agreement in 2014. So we've always been open to sensible, as I've said I think on a number of occasions in this House, to sensible reforms, so long as those reforms can command cross-community support and are consistent with the underlying and enduring principles of the Belfast Agreement itself. But I think the priority for now has to be to get those institutions back up and running, established, functioning, supported by the financial package, to start to finalise the programme for government, and then to start tackling the really tough challenges that the executive faces. But thereafter, I think there is room for a sensible debate about how we can prevent this, possibly prevent this happening in the future. But for now, I think we should focus on re-establishing the institutions, get things up and running, and with the support of the UK government and, where appropriate, under the three-stranded approach, the Irish government, supporting and helping the executive to get stuck into the challenges and to start building that brighter, stronger, more prosperous future for Northern Ireland, which I have always maintained, along with my right honourable friend, is the surest foundation for strengthening our union.
My Lords, I thank the Noble Lord the Minister for the repeat statement, and it is good that we are going to have bodies like Intertrade UK and the East-West Council. These are positive developments in the new needs-based budget provisions, the new model. That's all very positive, and I commend and congratulate all those who have been involved in the talks, who have approached it in good faith and integrity. However, will the Noble Lord accept, and your Lordships in this House need to realise that there are still many, many Unionists who are deeply worried and concerned that the Irish sea border, and we must drill down into the details of this deal, that the Irish sea border still exists, since many goods coming from Great Britain, British goods coming to Northern Ireland, especially in manufacturing, still need to go through full EU compliance checks and procedures. Whilst we have the new Green Lane renamed, which is mainly for retail, the default position is, as I've described, for everything else that doesn't have an end point for sale in Northern Ireland? And will he also confirm the concern that there is among many unionists, and he knows Northern Ireland very well, at the continued sovereignty, jurisdiction and application of EU laws over large swathes of our economy in 300 areas, to which the Stormont Break doesn't apply, and we cannot make or amend laws in those areas? These are fundamentally important constitutional and economic issues, and many unionists still are concerned about these issues. And whilst there are improvements to the operation of the Windsor Framework, which in itself was a tweak to the original protocol, whilst there are changes to the operation, the fundamentals of the Windsor Framework remain in place. Can the Minister confirm today what actual provisions of the framework itself, and can he lay it out, are changed by this deal? And will he confirm that the SIs currently in debate in the other place do not come into law until they are passed by this House on the 13th, if they are indeed passed?
I am grateful to the noble Lord Dodds of Duncairn for his words, and welcome his positive remarks surrounding a number of the new bodies, such as the Intertrade UK and the new East-West Council. He makes a number of points that have been made on a number of occasions by members of his party and other political parties in Northern Ireland around the Irish Sea border, so-called. I'm sorry to say to him that the government does take a very different view as a result of the deal that's been agreed over the past few days, as indeed I should gently point out does his party leader, who, along with the government, now accepts that what we've agreed is a firm basis for going back into the institutions and re-establishing the executive and the assembly at Stormont. We simply don't recognise that what he describes is anything like a trade border between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. But as a result of this deal, the number of goods that will pass through into Northern Ireland from Great Britain without checks will be significantly increased. He refers to EU law. I'd repeat what I've said on many occasions in the past. By the EU's own calculation, the amount of EU law that will apply in Northern Ireland is under 3% and is there solely for the purpose of dealing with goods that are going from Great Britain via Northern Ireland into the single market. And we have in place some very important and robust new democratic scrutiny structures to prevent new EU laws applying where they're not desirable or appropriate for Northern Ireland, and that's all set out in the command paper. On his final point about legislation, that legislation, as I pointed out in the statement, will reaffirm in the clearest possible terms Northern Ireland's position as an integral part of this United Kingdom, and it will guarantee and future-proof the smooth circulation of goods throughout the United Kingdom internal market. He is right, as a matter of fact, that those SIs will not become law until they've passed your Lordship's House.
My Lords, can I welcome the statement? It's been a frustrating 2 years, but I think that it would be churlish for anyone not to say well done, particularly to the Minister and his colleagues, and above all to Jeffrey Donaldson. I have, like the Minister, known him for many years, and he has served his country and this country well, in and out of uniform, as it happens, as he pointed out, unlike some of his extremist critics. So I wish the Assembly well when it's up, but I'm not naive enough to believe that there will not be further huge bumps on the road. I can't criticise anyone for suspending the Assembly, because I did it myself when I was Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, because the IRA refused to decommission their weaponry. And it is an unfortunate reality that the present construction lends it open to a number of parties, including the British government, to suspend the Assembly. So I think it is wise for the Minister to agree that the mechanics of this needs looked at again, but even wiser to recognise that it has to be done with great caution and it has to be led by the parties in Northern Ireland themselves. In the meantime, can I ask the Minister that he would ensure the most expeditious passage not only of the legislation but of the practical operational implementation of the agreement, because it is precisely the proof of the pudding being in the eating that will give some form of problem arising in the immediate future. And in the meantime, can I just send my best wishes to all the members of the Assembly who will be able to meet joyously together for the first time in a long while, and the prospective new First Minister, Michelle O'Neill. 25 years ago, I don't think any of us would envisage this sort of position being accepted by the community in Northern Ireland as a whole, and therefore let us recognise the advances that have been made as well as the problems that still faces.
I'm very grateful to the former Secretary of State for his comments and commend him for the work that he did as Secretary of State in trying to move Northern Ireland forward after 1998, in particular at Weston Park in, I think it was 2001. I'd also like to endorse what he said about Sir Geoffrey. In my comments, I did fail to mention the fact that Sir Geoffrey did have a distinguished career in the Ulster Defence Regiment, and I think we should recall that, and it is in sharp contrast, I think, to some of those who are now issuing threats and seeking to intimidate. You know, he did put on a uniform to serve his country. And we should not forget that. The Noble Lord referred to suspensions. I think I might be right in saying he holds the record for the number of times he actually did suspend the institutions, with, I should add, at the time, our support and agreement when he did the right thing. But he is absolutely right that we should be cautious in our approach to reform, but as I said, sensible and practical reforms ought to be considered where they're consistent with the agreement. But the conversation, I think he's right in saying, should primarily be led by the parties in the executive and in the Assembly. The history of trying to impose reforms and solutions on Northern Ireland without the consent of the people is not necessarily a happy one. Fine.
My Lords.
Said about implementation, I entirely agree, and the government is committed to doing that as swiftly as possible.
My Lords, I'm mindful that we're almost halfway through backbench speaking time, so if Noble Lords could keep their questions crisp, and I know my noble friend the Minister will keep his answers therefore crisp, we could get through everyone who wants to speak. Thank you.
My Lords, in a parliamentary written answer on the 6th of December 2023, the Noble Lady Baroness Penn advised me that 30 million has been reserved for Northern Ireland from the round 3 of a UK Levelling Up Fund. Can I have an assurance from the Noble Lord the Minister that this ring-fenced money is in addition to the 3.3 billion package to fill the hole in Northern Ireland's finances? And further, can he also tell me when this Levelling Up Fund monies promised for Northern Ireland will finally be released?
Grateful to the Noble Lord. I appreciate he has a particular interest in this area and is involved in one of the potential bids for Levelling Up Fund money in Coleraine. As to the details on this, I'm not in a position to give him an answer now, but I will endeavour to write to him very rapidly.
My Lords, the return of the Assembly is, of course, wholly welcome, but the agreement reached yesterday has implications for the whole of the United Kingdom, and many of us are concerned that it implies, in subtle and less subtle ways, a greater degree of alignment for the United Kingdom with European Union legislation, and therefore the slowing of the opportunities that are available to us from Brexit to enhance the prosperity of the country over time. But there is a more optimistic alternative view one of the effects of this agreement in practice is to introduce mutual recognition to the trading of goods in Northern Ireland, where European Union goods and British goods can circulate to different standards, provided they're destined to remain in Northern Ireland. A process that was ridiculed when it was put forward during the negotiations as being wholly undeliverable, but now we see actually happening on the ground. Could my noble friend say if His Majesty's government sees the opportunity to build on this so that Northern Ireland can actually winkle its way out eventually from under undemocratic EU rule and remain part of the United Kingdom as envisaged by the Good Friday Agreement for as long as the people of Northern Ireland by a majority support that position?
Well, I welcome the fact that my noble friend supports the restoration of the institutions. Where I do part company is on the issue of alignment. There is absolutely nothing in this deal that prevents the United Kingdom from diverging from European rules and European law should ministers believe that is in the interests of the United Kingdom. But fundamentally that will be a matter for the sovereign parliament, for the Parliament of the United Kingdom, which remains sovereign. Indeed, the pipeline of automatic alignment is actually ended through this agreement by the introduction of the new robust democratic safeguards and checks, such as the Stormont break. So far as his final comments are concerned, there is absolutely no diminution in Northern Ireland's position within the United Kingdom, as the statutory instruments make clear. Northern Ireland is a full and integral part of the United Kingdom and of the United Kingdom internal market.
I am very glad to add to the congratulations to the noble Lord the Minister, who has been central to the success of this process, and who, in the other House today, the other place, the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland talked about a breakdown of trust between the United Kingdom government and the local parties, and one of the people who's worked hardest to restore that trust is the noble Lord the Minister. But does he agree with me that this is in fact also a tribute to 3 Prime Ministers who have worked very hard from the beginning of this Parliament with great difficulty and often very slowly and often in this House under great criticism to put the Good Friday Agreement back in place and the commitment in that Good Friday Agreement to address the alienation of both one or the other community. In this case it was the Unionist community. Not that long ago it was the Irish nationalist community on the Irish language question. But to act in the spirit of the Good Friday Agreement and put that at the centre of affairs in a way which we've really seen quite dramatic change. The noble Lord will remember us both studying the 2018 withdrawal agreement. There was actually no mention at all of a role for the Northern Irish Assembly. Now look how far we've moved in that respect. No mention at all. The 2017 December 27 agreement between this government and Europe commits the British government to supporting an all-Ireland economy, which has then fuelled all those people in the TUV, for example, who believe that means a political united Ireland. In fact, 25 years ago they said the same thing about the Good Friday Agreement, but does he agree with me that too, that scenario has also passed as a result of the command paper? And finally, my Lord, does he agree with me there's a certain irony in this House when we debated the bill of the Johnson government? I can remember being told very firmly that the DUP will always let you down. Does he think that we can now smile at that? From Lord Clark of Nottingham, I should say.
I thank the noble Lord, who is my good friend, for his kind words in particular, and can I pay tribute to him for the many hours of work that he's put into this process, behind the scenes, and indeed, if I'm allowed to say, members of his wider family in bringing us to this place. In the interest of brevity, I endorse entirely the comments he made, and in particular want to reiterate once again my tribute to the Prime Minister and the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland for the fantastic work that they've done in bringing us to this place.
My Lords, I warmly congratulate my noble friend. I've known him for a long time, since our work together in the Northern Ireland office. Of course, we all welcome the re-establishment of the devolved administration. On the specific issue of territorial integrity, are we not, in these statutory instruments, codifying in statute the subjugation and suspension of Article 6 of the Acts of Union? The Noble Lord Dodds has already mentioned the issue of EU law continuing in Northern Ireland and the sea border still remaining. Isn't it the case, very simply, that having to apply for authorisation for trade in your own country of necessity fetters trade, as between Great Britain and Northern Ireland? And for the sake of brevity, specifically, may I ask the Minister, the commitment to protect the trade flows as between Great Britain and Northern Ireland in respect of a permanent guarantee is only contained in the command paper and doesn't have a statutory basis. My question is it possible that a future government may very well disregard it in the absence of bespoke legislation?
I'm grateful to my noble friend. He will be aware that the statutory instrument, which we will have the opportunity to debate at length, I should add, does reaffirm the supremacy of UK law, including the Acts of Union, in respect of Northern Ireland. On the trade issue, the aim of the second statutory instrument is to future-proof Northern Ireland's position within the UK internal market. Of course, no Parliament can bind its successors, but the effect of the statutory instrument would be to ensure that any changes would have to require changes in law.
My Lords, it is a fact that in any agreement that the devil will be in the detail, and therefore could we have clarification? Does Northern Ireland still remain under EU single market laws for production of food and agri-food? And does His Majesty's Government believe that the Irish Sea border has fundamentally been changed? And is there a fundamental change to the Windsor Framework, or is it still operational? And Northern Ireland will be able to enjoy UK state aid like every other part of the United Kingdom without reference to the EU?
Grateful to the noble Lord. The government is absolutely confident that this deal will guarantee the smooth flow of goods throughout the United Kingdom. And that's not just the opinion of the government, that's the opinion of his party leader, on which basis he has advised his party to go back into the Northern Ireland Executive. We will have a chance to debate these more fully in the interests of other speakers, but and I'm sure we'll come back to these points during the debate.
So I rise reflecting the views of the Green Party of Northern Ireland and join everyone here in welcoming the end of limbo, but stress that a return to the current form of devolved government is not a cure-all. Would the Noble Lord the Minister agree with me that the return of the Executive has to happen in a framework of understanding of the need to do things differently to before, particularly empowering people in local communities through more local democracy activities like local people's assemblies, that this will be very helpful going forward?
I'm grateful to the Noble Baroness. Those, of course, will all be matters for the new Executive to take forward, not matters for His Majesty's Government to impose. But I'm sure that they will take note of the Noble Baroness's comments.
My Lords, I join my noble friend, the Minister, in welcoming this paper, this command paper, Safeguarding the Union, which I think by common consent constitutes the most extensive set of commitments by any government in decades towards strengthening the Union, and thus fulfills many of the consent principles enshrined in the 1998 Belfast Agreement. This needs to be set in the broader context, of course, of this government's pro-union commitments, not least of which, and I would seek my noble friend's thoughts on this, in respect of the recent legacy legislation, where this government also pushed back at Dublin's intemperate response to the very necessary legislation in this House, which he took forward here to protect our service men and women and others besides. Will he therefore agree with me that the time has surely come for unionists of all hues to recognise this government's commitment to the Union and to strengthening our United Kingdom, and for them to come in and row in behind that?
very grateful to my noble friend, and I'd like to pay tribute to him for his work that he's done on the Northern Ireland Protocol Subcommittee over the past few years, and also the work of his think tank Policy Exchange, which has helped to frame the debate around a number of issues connected with the Northern Ireland Protocol. I agree entirely with the comments he makes about the government. Anybody reading the command paper can be in no doubt this is a unionist government committed within the terms of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement to the maintenance and strengthening of Northern Ireland's position within the United Kingdom. As somebody who is an unashamed and unapologetic unionist, I strongly welcome that.
Lords, I regret that the time for backbench